This is our Bobcat T250 track loader. Today we're going to try to replace the pins and bushings in our Bobtach. I got the pins out of the machine. Here's the old pin. You can see this pin is worn around the edges, which is no good. But it was really hard to get out. Even though it seems to be worn out, it was hard to get out of the cone. The arms themselves are cone shaped. So you put them through from the inside out on the Bobtach, and they go into this little cone right here, and they fit in there really good. It's got crap all in it right now, but I'm going to clean these up and inspect them. That seems to be worn a little, and the problem with these is you can't replace, they don't have bushings that I'm aware of. So I got to clean it out real good and try the new pins and see if they actually fit in there tight. If not, I'm going to have to come up with a different plan. You can get those cones and take them and have the whole entire machine, have it cut off and welded back on. But you got to get somebody that really knows what they're doing, because they got to be in line. Because if they get them just slightly off, they will they'll bind this whenever you start moving your quick attach. But these have to come out all the way through here, and there's a little cap inside there that you pull out with these locking rings. And I've got some of the old pins here, some of the old bushings. I've already got the bushings out of the cylinders. They were no problem to knock out. They were super thin, so they moved really easy. There's the old pins there, and here's the new pins that goes through these lift arms. And that bushing will go right in there. You got to line that. There's a little hole in that bushing, and that hole has to line up perfectly with the grease fitting. So you got to make sure you do that. Like here's the grease fitting back in there. You want to make sure that you, when you put that bushing in, which that bushing goes in from the other side, when you push it in there, that you line it up with that grease fitting. But I already had all that stuff knocked out, and I'm just worried about these pins not biting whenever we put them back in, because they could if they're, see that one's slightly longer, they could bottom out here before they make contact here, and they'll wobble around in there and just make it even worse. But the other one that I took out, it was locked in there solid. It didn't have any wear, a little bit of wear, but the bolt was broke off in it. Nothing was even holding it in. You can see where it's walled out here, where it's eating the bushing, and that's what we're going to try to get out here in a few minutes. We're going to try to, I'm going to clean it up real good and try to get these bushings out. Now I just knocked them out with a hammer and punch on the lift cylinders, but it may be a little more difficult on this. I've got to get the grease and stuff out of the way, and I may try to clean this thing up and spray a coat of paint on it. I like to take it outside and pressure wash it, but we've got really bad weather. You can see where the pins were worn. Look what it does to this. When that moves around in there, it wears this out against your, I guess against here. I'm not sure where it hits at. Well, where it hits, I guess it hits against that. But it's definitely worn on both sides. This thing's still in good shape. These have been replaced recently. These are new. The guy that I just traded He said he just put these in right before we traded. And we've got another issue too that's with our low charge pressure, but I think the problem with it is going to be the belt. I started getting there the other day, but we had to move the machine out to work on a vehicle. But I believe the belt has just got oil on it. Looks like it might have a rear main seal bad or something like that. But I'm going to work on getting this cleaned up a little bit, and we'll see where we go from there. We can get a real good look here at what's going on. This bushing, it can't come out this way because there's a lip, and this is where the grease cup and stuff goes in. It has to come out this side, but this side has been hammered against the side of the boom, and it's actually curled it in all the way around where that bushing's worn. And I run a screwdriver around this lip. No way that bushing's going to come out of there, so I'm going to have to take a die grinder and cut this all the way around with a die grinder. This side right here is the same way. It's actually worse. If you can see it or not, but the bushing is worn down, but there's a lip in front of the bushing, especially on this lower part. I can feel it all the way around. It's actually a sharp edge where this has just been beat and hammered against the sides here. It's slid back and forth and beat those sides up. I guess that's worn. This surface is worn, and it's just beat it to death. So there's another issue. This is something that when you don't grease this stuff, and that's the problem with this. There's no grease fittings on this at all. The grease fittings are in the cup that goes in. Let me get a pin. Okay, the pin goes in from the inside. It goes out into that arm. And then you got this cup that goes into the back side, which got a seal on it. And it goes in there, and it's got a lock ring that holds it in. Well, it's got a grease fitting that goes in here. The only way to get grease to it is you pump the grease in, and you got to hope and pray that there's enough room between that bushing and that pin to make its way all the way out here to this side and lubricate this outside edge. And you can't grease it any other way. It comes in from this cup. So it packs it from the back side and has to force it through. I guess if you see it coming out, you're okay. But man, if it gets at least a little bit of dirt in there, it's never gonna get enough grease over here, and it's gonna wear this out just like it has been. It mushroomed it in, so you can't get the bushing out. That's gonna be an issue. Okay, I started cutting it with a little stone, and I thought, well, there's supposed to be a grease seal in there because it come with grease seals, and I thought the grease seal was for this outside edge of this bushing. I don't know where else it would go. It has to be in between here to keep the grease out of that cone, because that cone don't need to be greased. It needs to be dried, and it needs to be wedged in there. So there has to be some kind of seal between this to keep the grease out of that cone part, keep it from slipping. But the seal, there's not even a hint of the seal. It's just so muckered up in there. So I started cutting it down here, got it about down to the bottom of the bushing. And I've got quite a bit of grinding to do. Looks to me like it had a lock ring or something, because it's got such a defined groove around it, but it doesn't. It doesn't have a lock ring. It's just hammered. It's got a big. It's more worn on this end than it is the other end, which makes sense because this is where all the work goes. But I'm going to keep on cutting at this. I can't find my 1/4-inch grinding stones. I'm having to use the 1/8 inch grinding stone with a drill. That ain't working very good. But I guess it'll get this lip out of here. I've got plenty of them little bitty cones to go on it, so that's really all I've got on hand. I've got a Dremel, but I don't have I don't have my 1/4 or 1/8 inch collet. All I got's a 1/4 inch collet. We'll keep on here. Okay, here's where we're at. I got the lip cleaned up, but I still couldn't get this bushing to move. So I took the old pin it's worn out anyway. You can't use it for nothing. Stuck it in there backwards and welded a big heavy bead all the way around it and the bushing. Now I'm going to let this cool, and it should shrink this bushing enough if I got the lip off of it. I may have to grind that lip a little bit more, but it should shrink that bushing enough where I could hammer it on the backside and knock it the rest of the way out. Now I wish I could say that this was my idea, but I saw a couple of guys on YouTube do it, and they welded it up, let it cool, and hit it one, maybe two times, and it shot across the room. So I hope it goes as smoothly. I've been grinding on this thing with little grinding wheels, trying to get that lip out of there. And I don't want to grind it too much because I want to be able to put that seal back in, make it fit right. So once I get that bushing out, I'll have to test fit that seal and tune it as I need to. I might even have to grind a little bit back in, or I could take and hammer around the edge of it and knock it in enough where that seal will stay. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right now I'm going to let it cool and take a sledge to it and see if I can drive it out. Well, I'm still digging at this. I've used a threaded rod and a great big socket. Well, here's something strange. I was filming a minute ago and the battery in my camera blew up. The camera started flashing, then all of a sudden it quit. And I took the battery out and it had swollen up like it was going to bust. I've never seen nothing like that. These are GoPro batteries. It's not a GoPro camera, but it uses GoPro batteries. Anyway, I've been trying to get this out. I can't get it to move. I tried to use a bolt and a big socket to press it out, but it's hackered up so bad in here where it's been beaten. I've ground it and ground it. I'll have to grind it some more. And I don't know what I'm going to do to get that out of there. But I'm going to try heating it. I brought my torch down. I'm going to try heating it up here in a minute and see what that does. I heated it up. It's on the move. There it is. That took some work. Ooh, it's hot. Get my screwdriver. You can see, man, it was in there. And I noticed this little ring came out. And that's where this was all knackered in. I ain't got my camera on it. This was all knackered in right here. And it had that lip. I ground a bunch of that lip out. I'm breathing hard. I've been slinging this little sledge. But it's out there. That's one side. All I done was took my old pen, welded it in there backwards, and hammered it from the back. Hammered it from the back side. I can't even talk. Now I'll clean this up. Should be able to get my new bushing right in there. And I've got this. It made its own. It clearanced its own way out of this lip, so the seal should slide right back in there perfectly. Everything should work out. Now all I got to do is repeat the whole process on the other side. Let me do some grinding. Okay, I've got this pin welded in backwards. Put a big weld on it. I just took the old pin, wore out pin. Not going to use it anyway. Welded it right to the bushing. And when it cools, it should shrink that bushing. It should pop out just like the other side did. Got the other side looking good. Looks like I banged on the wrong part there though. That's no good. We'll fix it. I'm telling you, I'm struggling here. I welded that full to shrink it up, but there was a 1/8 of an inch lip all the way around this. Get where you can see it. All the way around this edge there was a lip where it had wallered around, and it had that bushing trapped. So I've been grinding slowly with the whiz wheel trying to get that lip off of there, and I've been beating on it with the Sledge-O-Matic. Now I've beat this old pin, all the pieces, little pieces of shrapnel have been flying all over the garage. I can't believe I haven't busted a window. But I guess a person could put this on a press, but this thing weighs 300 pounds. I can't lift it by myself. And I've just been heating it and shrinking it and heating it and shrinking it. It's got a crack in it right there. It's hard to see the crack, but right there towards the bottom. It's got a crack and looks like it's coming up over the lip all the way around, but I'm just getting progressively bigger and bigger hammers. At first you don't succeed, get a bigger hammer. I know there's easier ways. I tried pressing it out with a rod and a bolt. Now I've got the hole so muckered up in there I can't get the rod back through it, so I'm just going to have to keep on beating it until it finally decides to give up. It's taken some time. I've been at this a couple of hours, but this is the last bushing. Then the thing will be ready to go back together. Looks like we finally got these bushings out of here. And that's been watered to death. A little edge come off with it. It must have been up here. I don't think we'll get a seal back in it unless we can put it on that inside edge, but it's watered pretty good. I don't know. The only thing to do would be to build it up with a weld and then cut it back out, but I don't have any more drums to go in there and do that. I'm going to get this cleaned up just a little bit, get some paint on. I used every stinking tool we had. I've used everything. I beat and banged and got hung in the wall over there and tore a big chunk out of the wall. I've made a mess. Filled the garbage can up with crap. It was rough. A lot rougher than what I thought. When I beat this old pin to death, like I said, I put the pin in backwards. Put the pin in backwards and then hammered it from that side until it knocked that bushing out. I put a couple of welds on the inside and shrunk that. I finally got it shrunk enough to where it would come out. This one actually has grease holes in it. The new bushings don't. The new bushings are just solid, but there's no way to grease them from here anyway. There's no grease fittings. You have to grease them from the end cap, and it squishes. It's supposed to squish in and go around it. There's quite a bit of space between the bushings and the pin anyway. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit and try to get some paint and stuff sprayed on here. Get rid of the 50,000 tools that we just used to get this mess out. Sledgehammers and welder. Straighten up a little bit and then go back to it. Okay, we've got some paint on that. Just to stop the rust. I'm just trying to get it all one color. And then we'll put the bushings in here in a little bit. Now I want to work on this down here. I got to clean it up, get some white paint on it before we throw the bushings and pins back in. The first thing I want to do is work on this step. It's supposed to be like that, good and straight and square, but it got damaged like they all do. This one was tore completely off. So I'm going to put this big giant pipe wrench on here and try to get it straight enough to get the step back on it. Step's laid here. Okay, I started putting these bushings in these I guess pivot cylinders, tilt cylinders on this machine. And all I did, and I've already got this one in, you can see that's where the grease fitting goes. You can see I've got the grease hole lined up. All I done was took the new pin and put the bushing on the new pin with the old bushing behind it, and then put a bolt through it. And I just drove it from the outside or inside and drove it out until it lined up. Now I've got room on each side to put my, this chair's driving me crazy, to put my grease fittings on either grease seals. I got grease seals I got to put on the other side. I may put a new grease fitting in it. The other ones didn't look like they'd been used in decades. Now I've got to do this other side. I'm going to do it the same way. I'm just going to put the pin in here, line the hole up, and then hammer the back of the pin using that other bushing to drive it in the depth that it needs to go. That one's going to slide in without any persuasion, it looks like. See, that's not in there very good. I don't see the grease hole. I got that one off just a little. But it sure didn't go in there awful too hard. I bet it's going to spin inside. I'm going to have to knurl it or something to keep it from spinning. I don't want that to happen. I had to take that bushing back out and go in there with some with a punch and punch some little divots all the way around it to tighten it up. You don't want that spinning in there. If you let it spin inside there, it'll move your hole for your grease fitting away from the opening, and you won't be able to get any. It'd be really hard, but it'd be hard to get grease down in there on your pin, and that's the only way you got to get it in there. I just took this, like I said, knocked it through a little bit. I need to knock it through just a tiny bit more. That looks pretty good. Now we can get our dust seals on either side and put our grease fitting back in, and at least the lift cylinders will be, not the lift cylinder, but the tilt cylinders will have their bushings in and their grease fittings ready. And now I got to move down here to these cones. If you take a look at these, you can see that they are just shot. That pin's in there tight, but look at the edge, how worn out it is. Wallered out good. That pin's bottomed out. We can get bushings in it and it'll do okay, but it won't be long before it wallers out again. What it is, these cones need to be replaced. This is the part. You can get this, but you have to have somebody cut it off. You got to cut the weld all the way around and then line these up and put them back on. And that's something I can't do. I could probably get them cut off, but what you really need is to gouge them off. A cutting torch doesn't do that good. A gouge will do real good. You take that air gouge and gouge them all the way around and put the new cones on, and that'll fix it back right. This side over here, this was the most worn out side in the bushings, but it's actually the tightest. That fits really good, but it's still worn horrible. We're going to put new bushings in and get new bolts in. Another thing I want to do, what a mess we got. But another thing I want to do is these old ones, I like to never got them out because, well, it's hard to see from that one. But you look at these shoulders, and the bolt goes in there like that, and it goes inside of a little cavity. Then you got this grease cap on the back side of it, which has a cavity. You fill this with grease, and grease is supposed to push its way across. It doesn't work very good. Even though there's a lot of room in there for the grease to go, it just doesn't seem to get all the way over in these pins. You don't want the grease on this end of the pin. That's why there's a grease seal there, because you want this to stay fixed solid inside of that bushing and only the pivot on this part. But when you go to take them back out, you notice there's just a tiny little shoulder here. And first thing happens, even when you're putting them in, people starts torquing on them as they're pulling in, and well, they'll start slipping. And if you got these caps out, it ain't no big problem. You can put a socket on there, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to heat these up and get them good and hot with my torch. I got a little bitty 110 welder, and it won't weld this thick metal very good. So I'm going to heat them up really good with a torch, get them about 180 degrees. And then I'm going to lay a bead on the sides of this. See, that bolt doesn't even sit down in there like it's supposed to. I want to lay a bead on the sides of this bolt. So this bolt, if I ever have to take it out, if it's me or someone else, when they get ready to take this bolt out, it'll be fixed solid. I don't think that could be a problem. And then you've got threads all the way along this. You run your, when you get ready to take them out, if these are pulled in there like they're supposed to be, you can take the nut off without it spinning. I think that's the biggest problem, is people can't get them tight enough inside that cone and don't put enough pressure on them, then the whole thing starts spinning. And instead of wearing out back here where the bushing is like it's supposed to, there's a bushing here. There is no bushing here, only that cone. So if it's flopping around in there, you get like this one. You can see this one here has got a big dip in it. That's not supposed to wear. But every one I've took apart like this, I've only took apart a couple, the bolts have been loose and they spin in here. They spin in the back side of it. So I think by welding this to this may eliminate it, may swell it a little bit. So I have to be careful about that. But because grease has to go through this bushing doesn't fit on there tight anyway. And it's supposed to go all the way through there and keep this lubricated just from the pressure of your grease gun. I guess it'll work. But you don't want grease on this part. So you got to clean this up. One thing I could do is go inside of that cone a little bit and put just a little bit, just to put a few spot welds around the inside of it, out here on this outside edge where it tends to waller around a little bit. And then grind it enough just where it gets a good tight fit. And it should hold it in there, keep it from spinning. It'll be good hardened metal. It won't wear as long as this don't spin. It can't wear. It can stay in there solid. I'm going to debate on that and think about it. I may go in there and put a little bit of weld on it. As for right now, though, I'll probably have to figure out how to get this welded. I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint the bottoms of those arms before I go any further. And then we'll come back to it. Well, got just a little bit of paint on the bottom of it. And that tube so I can put my step on. Unfortunately, I can't lift this. I'm going to have help to get it down here where I can put the pins and bushings in. But I wanted to get it painted anyway, and I painted this, at least on the back side. I can paint the front side when it's on the machine. But I got this lower part painted, but my paint, it's so cold in here, I haven't got the heat on because I'm afraid to run it with the aerosol one. My paint's running really bad because it's cold. I've got the door open just to keep the fumes out. And it's, of course, you can see there's 8 inches of snow outside. It's probably about 30 in here right now, and it's making my paint run. So I'm going to quit for a little bit. Got to put my Bobcat symbols on there, stickers. I got all that stuff over here, covered with dust, of course. I got a real bad run right here. I'm going to have to get out. But at least I got the bottom part where I can get the Bobtach back on, and that's what I wanted to accomplish in this video. I wanted to have it on there, but I'm out of time and I don't have a helper, so we'll end this video here and we'll pick right back up on this machine on our next video and continue trying to get it at least detailed a little bit where it looks halfway decent. You can see where I'm getting runny paint. It's going on the machine really good, but I'm afraid it's going to have problems. Got some really bad runs right here. But I'm going to stop for now. I'm out of paint anyway. I only got a half a can left. I've got to get these bars out of the way and paint around where they're laying at, but I got to have the quick attach on first. But that's for another time. I do appreciate you guys hanging out, and I wanted this to be a video on putting these pins in, but I spent so much time getting these bushings out of this thing that I wasted the whole video doing that. But it should go back together really easy. I haven't decided yet whether or not I want to weld any rings inside of there to keep those bushings from flopping, or pins from flopping around. I may just go ahead and put it together and see how it looks. If it doesn't do like I want, I'll take it back out and grind a big fat weld around it, then cut it back down to the size it needs to be for the cones. But that's for another time. Appreciate you guys hanging out. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and it helps me out. It doesn't cost you a thing. And thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I appreciate it. Stay clean.